Hi, welcome to Innovative Thoughts, where we discuss novel topics that affect our community, such as climate change. Today, we are looking at the environmental friendliness of the military. My name is Lily, and I am a first year international affairs major.
I'm Ryan, and I'm a second year aerospace engineering major.
My name's Arn, and I'm a first year CS major.
Hey, my name's Jessica, and I'm a first year neuroscience major.
To start off this episode, we're going to start with a fun fact. If the world's militaries were a country, this would mean that they have the fourth largest national carbon footprint in the world, greater than that of Russia.
That's a very interesting fact there. With the carbon footprint, a major part of that is greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are gases that stay in the Earth's atmosphere and they trap heat. This heat keeps the Earth warm, which is a good thing but also a bad thing. Dramatic increases in them can cause climate change and global warming, which is obviously very bad.
No wonder it's so hot outside today. Could you speak more about that, Ryan?
I can. So climate change, it is where an area will experience one climate and then over time the climate changes to something completely different. Say for example, there is a desert. In a couple years it could be floods that happen randomly.
That's wow.
That's really cool. I wonder how like the military could be involved in that.
That's a good question, Ryan. To start off, the country with the largest active military personnel is China, with over 2.1 million personnel, while the USA has 1.3 million personnel. Due to this great size of the military carbon footprint is 5.5% global emissions, which globally is a lot. The military as a whole uses a lot of fossil fuels, releasing more CO2, which is really bad for the environment and for people as a whole.
Speaking of CO2, the fact that military use is emitting so much CO2 in the air really concerns me for the health of people exposed to that environment. I mean, let's list the many different symptoms of being exposed to this, including sleepiness and anxiety, and it can impair thinking. This is because as the levels of CO2 in the air rises, it causes the CO2 levels in your blood to rise. This reduces the amount of oxygen that reaches your brain.
Lily, I have a few questions for you.
So Lily, what effects can environmental problems have on military activity?
That is a good question. To start off, low-lying military installations such as naval bases are particularly susceptible to rising sea levels and intense weather events that occur due to climate changes. Similarly, changes to the ocean buoyancy caused by melting ice can also severely impact submarine operations globally. Extreme heat and cold can also severely impact training. Extreme weather and just extreme fluctuation in environmental circumstances creates tensions over natural resources, and this occurs often in states least equipped to deal with the challenges. To get more specific, the United States' own military installations are at risk of flooding, drought, and desertification due to these environmental problems. Climate change also greatly affects the militaries of allies and partners of countries who are having these severe effects, which leads to certain advantages of other countries and extreme disadvantages of those who are dealing with climate issues. Bad climate conditions in countries' bad responses to the conditions can even lead to support for violence and can also contribute to escalating or prolonging conflict, which has a big impact on military in peacetimes.
So how can war be destructive to the environment then?
Well, for starters, militaries consume enormous amounts of fossil fuels. Military operations, including those by planes, tanks, and ships, involve enormous amounts of fossil fuels. Even training facilities, dormitories, and manufacturing plants use tons of fossil fuels. This fact is especially true of the U.S. military because of the sheer scale of its operations. The effects of war and the lasting chemicals also creates pollution of the air, land, and water, even in peacetime. The planet is always feeling the effects of war. Nuclear weapons development and production, as well as the use of the land to build factories and things like that, are also very harmful to the environment and can cause deforestation. Bombing and other methods of modern warfare also directly harm wildlife and biodiversity, which, as you'd expect, is even worse for the environment, for biodiversity and wildlife are a very big part of the earth and part of what keeps it healthy. Warfare releases greenhouse gas emissions as well. Modern warfare instruments like landmines and other explosive remnants of war can also restrict access to agricultural land and pollute soils and water sources with metals and toxic energetic materials. Just in general, engaging in warfare will continue to carry a high carbon and environmental price, especially if the fighting becomes drawn out or existential for one or both sides, and nobody ends up winning because the planet is being harmed, and that affects everyone.
That's really interesting. Could you talk about how does the environmental friendliness of the military have an effect on international relations and national and international security?
Well, the 2010 U.S. Quadrennial Defense Review, was the first to identify climate change as a threat to national security. There's also a theory of climate security, which is the idea that climate change will lead to, or at the very least exacerbate existing levels of instability, insecurity, and violent conflict around the world. By wreaking havoc on fixed infrastructure and equipment, climate change also threatens specifically the U.S. military's national and international security. There's also a lot of skepticism on how making the military more sustainable can make a military less efficient in doing its job. But renewable energy and effective storage on bases can, for example, provide protection against cyber attacks on electrical grids. Investments in adaptation and green technologies are likely to boost resilience, especially in more difficult environments, reduce vulnerabilities, and help maintain a battlefield edge over competitors. But despite this, how climate change shapes peace and security really depends on how societies respond to climate change, which is up to every country.
That's really interesting. Hey Ryan, I also have a question for you since you're an aerospace major. What are some ways to reduce the carbon footprint of the military?
There are a few, specifically involving logistics for the military. I have a quick fact here. So, for a commercial airliner, one flight of a modern commercial airliner, produces the same amount of greenhouse gases that the average person's car will produce in their entire lifetime. That is an extreme amount of greenhouse gases. Now, military aircraft that are used for logistics are much older than modern commercial airliners are. So the greenhouse gases that they emit are way more than what a commercial airliner is. So we need to focus on reducing the greenhouse gases that are emitted from the engines of cargo aircraft to make sure that they are not producing an enormous amount of greenhouse gases.
So Ryan, what can aerospace companies do to help reduce the carbon footprint?
One is to create better engines that are more efficient and can provide more thrust for less fuel used. So the way they can do that is by creating a geared turbine, which is a relatively new invention that helps to reduce or increase efficiency while also reducing the greenhouse gases that are emitted. They can also reduce drag or other such things that are more complicated and take more time to solve.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is the military so resistant into upgrading their technology to a more modern standard then?
There are many bureaucratic problems within the military. For example, the testing acquirement process for the military is extremely long. They can take well over 5 years to continue testing and developing their current aircraft just so that they can say that they are ready to accept them for service. So that takes forever. And once they have something that is accepted, they do not want to change that for fear of spending and wasting more money and time trying to develop it further, whereas they can just start fresh with a new base. So Aaron, I have a quick question for you. How can technology be leveraged to reduce the carbon footprint of military operations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So technology can be used in various ways to reduce the carbon footprint of military operations. For instance, the military can invest in energy-efficient equipment and vehicles, use renewable energy sources, optimize logistics to reduce fuel consumption, and implement smart building management systems. Also, advanced modeling and simulation tools can be used to test the impact of various policies and practices on the environment and energy consumption, which can lead to informed decision-making.
Okay, what role can artificial intelligence and machine learning play in making military operations more environmentally sustainable?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. So, AI and machine learning can play a crucial role in making military operations more environmentally sustainable by optimizing energy use and reducing waste. For instance, AI can be used to predict the energy demand of different units and facilities, allowing the military to allocate resources more efficiently. Also, machine learning algorithms can be used to optimize routes and transportation schedules, reducing fuel consumption and emissions.
Oh wow. Are there any innovative technologies or approaches that can be used to reduce the environmental impact of military equipment, such as vehicles or aircraft?
There are several. There are many innovative technologies and approaches that can be used to reduce the environmental impact of military equipment. For instance, hybrid and electric vehicles can reduce fuel consumption and emissions, while lightweight material can reduce energy use and improve performance. Also, the use of biofuels, such as algae-based fuels, can significantly reduce emissions, creating long-term solutions to current problems. So, Jessica, I have a few questions for you. I know that you're a neuroscience major, and I kind of want to hear your input about this. So, what are potential cognitive and behavioral benefits of implementing environmental friendly practices within the military?
So, neuroscience is pretty simple when you look at it in a broad perspective, of course. Tying this to psychology as well, because I specifically study neuropsychology, your environment plays a significant role in your mood and body. You ever hear the phrase, you're a product of your environment? This is completely true and is the middle point of where neuroscience and environmental science meets. I utilize neuroscience to mold people to mold the environment. Does that make sense? Like, use neuroscience to change the behaviors of people so that they could, as a result, either fix the environment or, more importantly, come up with ways to possibly create training programs.
Interesting. So what are the potential implications of exposure to environmental toxins and pollutants for the cognitive and neurological health of military personnel? And how can these risks be mitigated through eco-friendly initiatives?
So, fun fact, not necessarily a wild mouth-dropping fact. The human brain health is directly influenced by environmental factors. The health of the human brain, including cognitive function, emotional well-being, and mental health, can be influenced by environmental factors such as air pollution, water quality, exposure to toxic chemicals, climate change, and access to green spaces. Neuroscience research has shown that environmental factors can impact brain development, neuroplasticity, which is basically the brain's ability to change and adapt due to experience, and neurodegenerative diseases, emphasizing the important relationship between the environment and brain health. Exposure to environmental toxins such as heavy metals, which is obviously very used in the military, pesticides or air pollutants, can have a very detrimental effect on brain function. They can disrupt neurodevelopment, like I said before, and cause Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease.
Oh wow, that's really intriguing. How can the principles of neuroscience be applied to optimize training programs for military personnel aimed at promoting environmentally sustainable behaviors?
So, training is actually the best way we can utilize neuroscience to create greener spaces or greener military. The military can adopt practices that minimize its environmental impact during training exercises or deployment or other operational activities. This can include reducing fuel consumption, minimizing waste generation and pollution, or just implementing environmentally friendly practices for waste disposal. Neuroscience can also contribute to promoting sustainable behavior among military personnel by understanding the cognitive and behavioral factors that influence decision making, motivation, and behavior. Military leaders can leverage this knowledge to encourage environmentally responsible actions. For example, maybe using behavioral interventions like incentives can encourage military personnel to adopt eco-friendly practices in their daily activities, ultimately leading to a more environmentally conscious military culture.
After hearing from 4 very different viewpoints to this problem, do you guys have any solutions to this problem that can be introduced?
Yeah, I think that a very important step that we need to take is to understand kind of like why these things happen, and a lot of it is attributed to fossil fuel usage. So I think a very important step to take is to have more energy sustainable practices, such as using solar power or wind power, which is very easy to use, especially like in maritime exploration. That involves very little usage of fossil fuels, and we can take advantage of the open seas and take advantage of the sun, and also take advantage of the wind currents that form as like ships sail. This will help to not pollute the waters and also not pollute the atmosphere, which is very important. And I think it's a very key step that we can take in the short term while we think of long-term solutions to phase out different chemical sources, such as like PFAS chemicals or like other like endocrine disruptors that exist within the waters that exist because of military testing.
So, on a more social level, collaborating with environmental organizations or government agencies and other stakeholders can help the military access expertise and resources to implement environmentally friendly practices. This can include partnerships for research and development of eco-friendly technologies, joint conservation efforts, and engagement in environmental policy. Researchers can develop new technologies that are more environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and sustainable for use in military operations. This can include advancements in renewable energy, energy storage, and energy management technologies, as well as innovations in waste reduction and recycling technologies.
And just in general, I think the military policies on its reaction to environmental issues needs to be on a high level of focus of governments all around the world. There are so many ways in which we as a people could change this, and the world needs to take big steps to put together a solution to this issue. We need to come together and work as a team, as a society, to address these environmental issues and climate change, for they are having big impacts on the world from basic citizens all the way up to the military level. We urge you all to educate yourselves and participate in making the earth greener and healthier and stopping climate change and other enormous environmental problems. And with that final thought, thank you so much for listening. This was Innovative Thoughts, and we hope to see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.